Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Russ Riesinger. The Trump administration ordering sanctions in hopes of stopping Turkey's offensive in Syria.
The assault on Kurdish fighters and civilians by Turkey began almost immediately after the president ordered a pullback of U.S. forces from the region last week.
Well, the president is now taking aim at Turkey's economy, ordering sanctions against the country's Minister of Interior, as well as its ministers and departments of defense and energy.
Catherine Johnson has more details from the White House.
President Trump announced steps his administration will take to punish Turkey for its offensive against Kurdish forces in northern Syria. In a statement, the president said the U.S. will impose sanctions on current and former Turkish government officials, impose a 50% tariff on steel, and cease negotiations on a $100 billion trade deal. President Trump spoke with Turkish President Erdogan by phone Monday.
The President of the United States called on the President of Turkey to stop the invasion. The President has directed me to lead a delegation to Turkey to begin those discussions.
Over the weekend, President Trump ordered a pullback of U.S. troops in the region. The Kurds have turned to Russian-backed Syrian forces aligned with dictator Bashar Assad to defend against the Turkish advancement. Meanwhile, some of nearly 11,000 captured ISIS fighters and their supporters have reportedly escaped. Members of Congress are also working on a sanctions package to punish Turkey, separate from any action taken by the White House. Senator Lindsey Graham took his push for bipartisan sanctions to Fox News Channel Monday.
There's going to be crippling sanctions imposed by the Congress to supplement what President Trump's administration has done.
Senator Graham and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have discussed plans for a sanctions bill on the phone. Speaker Pelosi fired off a series of tweets saying Congress should also pass a joint resolution to overturn the president's decision to withdraw from Syria, in addition to passing a stronger sanctions package than the White House. The largest population of Kurds in the U.S. is in Nashville, Tennessee, where people held a rally in solidarity with loved ones back in Syria. Catherine Johnson, CBS News, the White House.
Vice President Mike Pence and a delegation says that they will leave for discussions in Turkey soon.
Defense Secretary Mark Esper says he'll go to Brussels next week to push NATO allies to take diplomatic and economic steps to respond to Turkey's actions in Syria. Well, farmers and ranchers are cautiously optimistic about a trade agreement between the U.S. and China.
President Trump says China will immediately start buying very large quantities of American agricultural products, even though that agreement won't be signed for another 3 weeks. Although the White House has not given specifics, the president says China will purchase between $40 and $50 billion worth of ag products.
In the past, China topped out around $25 billion. Several agricultural trade analysts are skeptical.
Well, today the communications office of Senator Steve Daines issued a statement. It says Steve is glad President Trump is working towards finalizing a deal with China and looks forward to continuing to work to get this deal finalized. Daines was in China in September working on the trade agreement.
Senator John Tester also weighed in today, saying it's critical that we reach a full comprehensive deal with China as soon as possible to end the pain this unnecessary trade war has caused Montana's ag producers. Well, a young girl from Glacier County is safe tonight after her abductor is captured near Helena.
Just about a half an hour after that Amber Alert was issued, the girl was rescued and is said to be in good health. Sheriff's offices from Glacier, Cascade, and Lewis and Clark counties all assisted in that rescue.
Now, they apprehended the suspect nearly 200 miles away on I-15 near Helena. There's no information being released at this time.
The city of Helena today marked its first official celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day. People gathered at the steps of the city-county building to show their support for the change. The Helena City Commission unanimously passed a resolution in June to change the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Speakers at the event stressing today that it's about celebrating Indigenous people and showing Native children their heritage matters.
We, the Indigenous people, are the foundation of this country. And it is time that we need to be recognized for everything that we have done for this country.
Montana State University also celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day. That celebration began with a group prayer and march around the Bozeman campus. Students and members of the public then gathered on the Centennial Mall for speeches about the importance of officially recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day, as well as the missing and murdered Indigenous women epidemic affecting people all across the country.
I'm scared. I'm literally scared of hearing about my nieces going missing someday, about my sister, about my cousins, my friends, people in my community. This is an issue that hits way too close to home.
The city of Bozeman adopted Indigenous Peoples Day as today's official holiday in 2016.
Well, just the name Columbus Day is a title marred by controversy. For the first time this year, 2 states and Washington, D.C. are not celebrating Columbus Day as part of this nationwide movement. Maya Rodriguez takes us inside that debate.
At the official National Columbus Day celebration in Washington, D.C., the pomp and circumstance is in full swing. But this year, the city itself isn't part of the party. A few days ago, the city council here voted to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, joining more than 100 cities and half a dozen states around the country that have chosen to honor Native Americans instead of the Italian explorer, whose arrival brought conflict with Indigenous people.
Columbus has a complicated history, but there's not one figure in history that does not have a complex history.
Anita Bevacqua-McBride is with the National Italian American Foundation. They don't want to see Columbus Day disappear and argue there's enough room on the calendar for both days.
I think that's fair, but it doesn't, in our mind, give license to erase the fact of what he did in terms of the exploration of the New World.
I'm very proud of this vest. This is my grandfather's vest, and my great-grandmother made it. So that's a very sentimental piece to my family and I.
For Kevin Alice of the National Congress of American Indians, the change to Indigenous Peoples Day has been a long time coming.
We're not trying to rewrite history. We're just trying to make people take the time to look at what real history is and understand that we played an important role of that.
Roles in history still being debated in the present day. In Washington, I'm Maya Rodriguez reporting.
Well, a tip from a passing hunter leads authorities to 5 deer carcasses in Rosebud County and citations being handed out. The dead deer were found in a field outside of Colstrip and had been killed with a bow. Gloves and disposable knife package were found there at the scene. That allowed deputies and an FWP warden to find those responsible. The hunters, who were not identified, were cited for leaving garbage and carcasses at a spot away from the kill. If you do notice a wildlife violation, you're asked to call FWP's tip line at 1-800-TIP-MONT.
With less than a month until November's election for City Council, the Billings Chamber of Commerce has picked its favorites. The Chamber endorses candidates in Wards 1, 4, and 5, but did not choose to endorse anyone in Ward 2 or 3. In Ward 1, Kendra Shaw receives the endorsement. She is facing off against John Armstrong. In Ward 4, Carmelita Dominguez gets that boost. She was second in the polls and will go toe-to-toe with Pam Purrington. And in Ward 5, Mike Boyette gets the chamber's nod. He is up against Dennis Ovestad. Now, Roy Neese and Randy Hines are facing off in Ward 2, and Danny Chiriki and Aldo Rowe are vying for votes in Ward 3. Tomorrow night, all 10 candidates will square off for a candidate forum. That's at the Billings Public Library at 5:30 p.m.
Published report says Montana Secretary of State Corey Stapleton not only used a state pickup truck improperly to commute from Helena to his family home in Billings for 2 years, but also that he drove that truck on weekends and holidays.
Stapleton, however, told MTN News Today that the weekend story by the Associated Press had no new information. He says it's inaccurate to suggest that using the truck on weekends or holidays was not related to his state work. A state audit found state law does not allow using state vehicle to commute more than 30 miles and that Stapleton was using it to drive 240 miles to Billings.
Stapleton returned the vehicle to the motor pool this April. The AP story said he drove that truck an average of 2,500 miles a month in the first 27 months on the job, and since April has driven a state vehicle only 500 miles a month. Stapleton was elected as Secretary of State in 2016 and is one of 5 Republicans running for Montana's open U.S. House seat in 2020.
A new service opened its doors on the Billings West End today with the goal of shortening lines at the Department of Motor Vehicles.
MVD Express offers a new location to renew driver's licenses, vehicle registration, and apply for a real ID, but that convenience does come with a cost.
Q2's Mitch Laggy is standing by now to tell us all about it. Mitch.
Well, Russ and Jeanelle, New Mexico-based MVD Express has been working with the state of Montana since 2017, processing titles for car dealerships. Today, the business is open to the public. MVD Express serves a similar role as the regular DMV, but they're open on Saturdays and will work with people who live in any Montana county. For your vehicle, MVD Express can process registration, title, and temporary tags. It can also process identification cards, driver's licenses, and issue real IDs. A flat processing fee of $34.99 will be charged to every transaction on top of the state's regular fees. The hope is that the business will take the pressure off state workers during the run-up to the real ID deadline.
We are hoping to at least get a third of their business to help try and alleviate that. You know, they are kind of hamstrung with their budget, and it's hard for them to open up new stores and hire a lot more people. So we have a great partnership with the DOJ to be able to help that overflow.
And the deadline to fly and enter federal buildings without a real ID is October 2020. To get one, you'll have to bring proof of identity like a birth certificate or passport, social security card, or W-2, and 2 bills in your name. The state charges between $25 and $50 to issue a real ID. Russ and Jeanelle?
Right. Thanks so much, Mitch.
Turning to weather now, it's a new week, and Ed looks to be polar opposite from last week, huh?
That's right. Yeah, we're trying to shift gears a little bit as we take a look. We don't have to tell you that it's been so cold. As a matter of fact, for the month so far, we've only had 2 days where we've actually had slightly above normal temperatures. Some of those days have been really cold compared to normal. So is there hope? Well, as we start looking towards the last week of the month, or at least start getting into the last 10 days, it's still trending towards wetter than average conditions across Montana, Wyoming, and off into the Dakotas. In fact, a good portion of the country looks like it could be wetter than average for this time of the year. Some exceptions in the desert Southwest. And as far as temperatures go, well, it will trend warmer in the eastern portion of the state by the time we get into the weekend and early next week. That cool air certainly wants to stick around, but there are some breaks. We'll tell you about that coming up.
All right, thank you, Ed.
Up next on tonight's 10 o'clock news, the only leaf peeping we have these days is the leaves peeking out from piles of snow. We'll find out why our early winter muted our fall.
And later in sports, Scott delivers Q2's latest edition of Game Changers. Wait until you see the circus play at number 1.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.